Okay, let's dive right in. Literally, as we speak, a very rare and potentially deadly outbreak is unfolding across Europe, turning what was supposed to be a luxury expedition into a massively complex, global medical emergency. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to break down the facts, the data, and the science behind the 2026 European hantavirus anomaly. We'll look at exactly why international health authorities are basically on high alert right now, and what it actually means for global travel.
The numbers we're looking at are definitely sobering. Right now, we're tracking 11 total identified cases, with 9 of those being strictly lab confirmed, and tragically, 3 reported deaths. The epicenter of this whole unexpected crisis? It's a Dutch expedition cruise ship called the MV Hondius. This ship recently traveled from South America up toward Europe, carrying passengers from 23 different countries. Now, any infectious outbreak on an enclosed ship is an absolute logistical nightmare, but the specific bug involved here is what makes this completely unprecedented. Which brings us to a massive question. How on earth did a virus that is notoriously spread by rodent droppings cause an international crisis on a pristine luxury cruise ship? To solve this medical mystery and figure out why experts are so worried, we really need to understand how this virus normally behaves. So, let's look at Section 1. What is hantavirus, a rare and deadly virus? Before we can fully grasp why this 2026 anomaly is breaking all the rules, we kind of have to establish what the normal rules actually are. Hantavirus is a rare but exceptionally dangerous pathogen. It belongs to a family of viruses known as ortho-hantaviruses. Now, this isn't some brand new mystery bug, not at all. It was actually first recognized by doctors way back in the 1950s during the Korean War, which, fun fact, is why it's named after the Hantan River in South Korea. Decades later, it made global headlines in 1993 after a highly publicized outbreak in the southwestern United States. Because it has this long history, epidemiologists actually have a really firm grasp on how it normally operates. There are basically 2 distinct ways this virus usually attacks the human body. First, you've got hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, mostly found in the Americas, which aggressively attacks the lungs. This one goes bad fast as the respiratory system basically shuts down. Then there's hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome, which is far more common in Europe and Asia. That one targets the kidneys, causing severe bleeding issues and renal failure. Normally, people get infected with either of these strains by breathing in tiny contaminated particles from rodent waste, like urine or droppings, or by touching contaminated surfaces. In Europe, the cases they usually see every year are strictly this kidney-focused rodent-carried strain. But right here is where our story takes a wild turn. Moving to Section 2. The Andes strain twist. Human transmission. Brace yourself because all those established rules we just talked about, they completely go out the window with this 2026 anomaly. To really appreciate this twist, let's think about standard transmission. Step 1. A rodent leaves contaminated waste. Step 2. A human breathes in those microscopic particles and gets infected. But here is the absolutely critical part. The transmission chain normally stops right there, at the human. It's a biological dead end. For the vast majority of hantaviruses, you do not spread it to your family, you don't spread it to your coworkers, and you definitely don't spread it to fellow passengers on a ship. But the MV Hondius outbreak? Total game changer. Health authorities investigated and confirmed that this outbreak is the Andes hantavirus strain, which is normally linked to Argentina and Chile. Here's the kicker. It is literally the only known hantavirus in the world capable of spreading directly from person to person through close contact. Suddenly, the whole mystery makes sense. The virus didn't sweep through the ship via some hidden army of rodents. It spread from person to person. And because you've got international travelers moving through global networks, experts are calling this an incredibly worrying scenario. So, what actually happens to your body if you catch this unique stream? Let's transition into Section 3, Symptoms and Treatments. One of the absolute toughest things for public health officials here is the incubation period. After you're exposed, symptoms can take anywhere from 1 to 8 weeks to even show up. That is up to 2 solid months where someone could be traveling the globe completely unaware they're carrying a highly dangerous pathogen. And once it starts, the symptom progression is terrifyingly fast. The early symptoms are super deceptive. They basically mimic a standard flu. We're talking fever, profound fatigue, muscle pain, chills, maybe some dizziness and nausea. It is incredibly easy to just misdiagnose it as a bad cold in those early days. But the jump to severe symptoms, it happens with alarming speed and causes massive trauma to the body. You get severe breathing difficulty, your lungs start filling with fluid, blood pressure drops dangerously low, internal bleeding kicks in, and ultimately kidney failure.
The biological stakes here are just staggering. Some of these severe hantavirus strains carry a fatality rate of up to 40%, averaging out around 35%. That right there is exactly why the Andes strain is considered one of the most concerning viruses to track. But there is a silver lining. Early hospitalization. If a patient gets into intensive care at the very first sign of those mild flu-like symptoms, their chances of survival go way, way up.
The reason getting to the hospital early is so absolutely crucial comes down to the fact that our medical arsenal is pretty limited. Doctors can diagnose it using PCR and blood tests, but right now, there's no specific cure. There's no universally approved vaccine either. So treatment relies 100% on extreme, aggressive intensive care. Medical teams have to use interventions like oxygen support, ventilators, and precise fluid management just to keep the patient's vital organs running while their own immune system fights off the virus. Knowing all that, an 8-week incubation period, human-to-human transmission, super high fatality rate, how do you possibly contain it when the ship's passengers have already gone home? Let's look at Section 4, Europe's emergency response. Hundreds of contacts from that ship scattered across Spain, France, the UK, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Germany, Ireland, and even as far down as South Africa. To get ahead of a disaster, European authorities instantly triggered massive containment protocols. Health agencies started a grueling 42-day monitoring period for anyone exposed. We're seeing strict isolation centers. France, for example, locked down very strict measures immediately. The UK moved exposed individuals right into precautionary quarantine. You combine that with heavy airport screenings and the massive task of contact tracing hundreds of passengers, it's literally a continental dragnet trying to ensure this virus doesn't find a permanent home in Europe. Now, whenever we start throwing around phrases like airport screening and quarantine centers, it naturally triggers some serious anxiety. So let's just directly address the elephant in the room. Section 5. Is it a pandemic? Are we looking at a repeat of recent global health nightmares? Well, let's look at the facts. Both the WHO and the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control have stepped in to say the risk to the general public actually remains quite low. There's no sign of a pandemic right now. And the biology explains why. Unlike COVID-19, which is highly airborne and spreads incredibly easily through casual, everyday contact, Hantavirus, even this human-to-human Andes strain, is fundamentally different. It's just much harder to spread. You generally need very close, prolonged exposure to an infected person. Plus, researchers have confirmed there's absolutely zero evidence that the virus has mutated to become more contagious. They're watching it like a hawk because of that long incubation period, but the actual pandemic risk, exceptionally low. So, the real takeaway here is this. The Hantavirus outbreak in Europe may not be a global pandemic, but it is a reminder that in a connected world, even rare viruses can quickly become international concerns. I think that just beautifully hits the nail on the head regarding modern global travel. A rare, hyper-localized virus in South America can literally turn into a public health emergency in Europe in just a few days. International health cooperation has honestly never been more critical. So, I'll leave you with this thought to chew on. The next time you hear about some rare, isolated virus on the far side of the planet, ask yourself, just how isolated are we really in today's world? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you next time.